Shivani, hi. Uh, Good evening, and thank you for joining us. So before we begin, and while we're waiting for a few more participants to come join the session, allow me to introduce myself to you quickly. So my name is Abhishek, and today I'll be the host conducting the Wellness Wednesday session from Onsurity. And it's an absolute honor to have you, come talk to our participants today. And I hope it's a great, insightful session for all of us, and we have a lot of takeaways. And how do you? How are you doing today, Shivani?
Thank you so much for having me. First of all, thank you, Onsurity, for inviting me for this. It's really, really good initiative that you guys have going on. I'm doing okay. I'm energetic, I'm motivated, and I hope that our participants are also equally energetic and motivated.
Wonderful. I think that's the energy we've always had on our Wellness Wednesday sessions, and thank you so much for bringing that energy on board. And I really looking forward to this session.
Yes, me too. Me too.
So thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. Very good evening to everyone. And welcome back to another exclusive live on Wellness Wednesdays with Onsurity. And my name is Abhishek, and today I'll be your host for the evening. And we have a great panelist today coming here to share her thoughts on skills of well-being, as our topic for today is. And we're going to be learning a lot with Shivani on how one can build a lot of healthy well-being habits and work on themselves. So allow me to quickly introduce you to Shivani and speak a little bit about our guest for today. So Shivani holds a master's in counseling and political psychology from Lancaster University. She's a certified REBT practitioner. And as a wellness coach, Shivani also conducts a lot of emotional first aid trainings for corporate business leaders. And her program is called the Wellbeing Ambassadors Program. And today we have Shivani Chauhan coming and speaking to us about, the wellness one can have for themselves and the skills one requires to have a healthy well-being, right? And it's a great honor to have you, Shivani. And thank you so much for coming and giving insights to our attendees today. And looking forward to our session. And over to you.
Thank you, Abhishek. Thank you, everyone, for being here. There's a very interesting activity that I would like to start with before I even share my screen. I want everybody on the chat box to tell me on a scale of 1 to 10, where is your energy level? 1 being, oh, I'm so tired, it's midweek. Okay, 10 being, yes, I'm here. Okay, I'm here, I'm present, I'm tuned in, I'm motivated. Okay. All right. Thank you all for participating. I love this. Okay, someone says 100. I love it. Nice. I can see that a lot of us are above a 5, so that's a win. Usually this is the time of the day, when a lot of us start feeling a little lazy. But this is good. This is good. So please keep that energy up throughout, because I will be asking you all to, interact with me through the chat. Definitely there's some activities that are there that will help you think, certain prompts that you can respond to in order to, have some meaningful takeaways like Abhishek mentioned. Right. So now I will share my screen. Thank you, everybody, for participating in my energy check. All right. Just give me a second.
So a quick note before Shivani begins her presentation. We'll be having a Q&A session towards the end of the Wellness Wednesday program. It'll be a 15-minute session where all of you who have your questions can put down in the chat, and you can make a note of your questions right now during the session. And we'll have a quick session towards the end where Shivani would be happy to address your queries. And that's how we'll proceed with the session today.
Great. Thank you again. So when I was preparing for this webinar, right, I was preparing for today's session, I was also thinking about the International Day of Cooperatives, because it somehow just kind of aligned with, the request that we had, right? So today is definitely about skills of well-being that I'm going to be talking about, but also I'm going to be trying to celebrate with all of you International Day of Cooperatives, because that's a day that, we appreciate all the cooperatives around us, the organizations that are working in this cooperative structure. I'm not too sure how many of us here are familiar with the structure of a cooperative, but that is the reason we are all here today. We're here to celebrate that. And I have a very interesting take on it. I'm going to take you guys through it definitely, and just bear with me and let's go through this journey together. Okay. So firstly, I want to start by asking you all, how many of you here are familiar with a cooperative structure of an organization? You can just say a yes or a no. If you're familiar, yes. Not familiar, no. Right. No. Okay. All right. Not a problem. Thank you for responding. I like the responses. Thank you all for responding. So a cooperative, for those, of you who are not too familiar with the concept, is, there are different types of structures in an organization, how an organization works, right? The reason why cooperatives are so important is because they come with this mindset of, independence. The organization structure is open, it's trusting, it's empathetic, it's autonomous, right? People in the cooperatives, they're able to make decisions about their own services and they utilize those services, right? So why I was bringing this into this here, because, we are celebrating International Cooperatives Day, but with an angle on well-being, right? So what I'm doing today is I'm bringing to you all a structure of well-being. Cooperatives look after the general well-being of their members, but they also and then the members look after the well-being of each other. And that is exactly what I'm bringing to you all today. So I'm welcoming you all to come to a space, right? Today we're going to talk about space, okay? Before we even get to talking about what are well-being strategies, or, 5 things that I have to do, or 20 things I have to do, I want you all to take a moment today, right now, and create a mental space that's just yours. What does that space look like, right? What is the color of that space? Is there a couch somewhere, do you have a friend there in that same space, right? Or are you just, by yourself? You're okay, right? So before we even get to what well-being is and well-being strategies we're going to use, I want you all to come and create that space mentally for yourselves today, so you can go ahead and apply these strategies, right? And that is the core of today's entire session. We're going to be talking about how to create space for ourselves as well as people around us, and how do we involve, people around us within our space in order to function in our day-to-day lives, right? And that was the inspiration for me was in cooperative organization. So I'm going to keep coming back to that because the inspiration was from there. A cooperative organization is independent, as you can see on the screen as well. They're independent, right? They're constantly educated. They're constantly building skills. They're autonomous. They have concern for community, concern for the members in that cooperative. And last but not the least, they're called cooperative. They cooperate with each other. Right? Now, in a well-being strategy, this is a structure that inspired me to create this structure for all of you today, to create space. As a well-being strategy in our space, we need to be able to have boundaries. Think of ourselves as people who are constantly developing, so have personal growth, meaningful goals, purpose in life, have a vision ahead. Autonomy of emotions, right? We all are humans here. We all have emotions, right? Connectedness. How connected are we to ourselves and also externally to people around us? And how do we do that? We do that through empathy. How do we live in this society? We live through empathy, right? We must build these skills. I'm going to be taking you through one by one factor of space. And please, stay with me. and do these tiny activities and prompts and reflection points that I will have for you, right? I'm going to start with the first S, which is setting boundaries. Okay. How many of you here in the past, maybe week or month, or, think recent times, you've, tried to say no to somebody, you wanted to say no to somebody, but you just couldn't. You just couldn't. Yeah, resonates. I'm that person. Yes. You just couldn't, right?
It's just, I think all of us can relate to this at a very micro level, that, that there are a lot of times where it's so difficult. It's such an overwhelming task to actually set boundaries for, creating the space first.
Right. Exactly. So I want you all to kind of, even Abhishek, thank you for putting that in, because I want you all to think about, now that you've, not been able to say the yes or say the no, right? What is the barrier that has come in between this, right? Why have you stopped that? Why have you not been able to say the no? What is the barrier, right? Feel guilty. Thank you for responding. Definitely, there is guilt. It's an emotional barrier. There's a thought barrier, right? What if I say this and tomorrow this person won't talk to me, right? There's a lot of, like, people are not going to like me if I keep saying no to them. Definitely. Guilt is one of the biggest emotions that comes in while we are setting boundaries, right? And this comes very commonly with all of us. It comes when we have to set boundaries with our colleagues, with our friends, with our family, right? With our parents, maybe with our children, right? Even it's important to build those boundaries with them, but it's very difficult to do that because of the guilt. And thank you all for sharing your thoughts, right? Other people might feel bad. Again, guilt. Now, I want to talk about the fact that in your space today, as a well-being strategy, you have to have a kit, the art of saying no. I think somebody mentioned that in the chat here, right? Why do we have to say no? It's very important to do that, because sometimes things are just people are going to want your time. People are going to need your time. People are going to be, requiring that from you. But sometimes you may not have the bandwidth for it. You may not have the energy for it, or you may not have the resources for it, physically, emotionally, all of this, right? At this point, we need to start thinking about, our priority. What do I want? And what is this doing right now, right? Like, what am I getting currently? So here in your space, the first S is you need to be able to set boundaries. How do we do that? There are a few ways to say no to people, right? One of the best ways to say no to somebody is putting the word emotion into it, okay? We're all human beings, let's remember that. The way we connect with each other is through emotions, right? We all connect with each other, because if I say to Abhishek or somebody here like, hey, I'm really scared right now, can we not do this, right? Abhishek will think twice and say, okay, she's scared, she's sharing something, it's a feeling, right? He will take that into account, because that fear also resonates with him sometime, maybe not in that moment, but some other time, right? So here, the key, the real art and the key of saying no and setting boundaries is communicating to the person your feeling. Most of the time, we don't do it. We'll just be like, no. If we want to say no, we'll just be like, no, thank you, right? No, I don't want to do this, right? But we don't do the emotion bit.
I think, Shivani, the fact that people, fail to do the emotion bit has a lot to do with their belief system. This is what I feel. Do you think that's right?
Right, it does definitely. See, because our thoughts and our beliefs are connected to our emotions as well. It's how we think, and then we have these beliefs about certain things, like certain things have to be this way, certain things are not supposed to be this way. The way we're raised also affects our belief system. But you're definitely right. It's our belief system that also stops us from, setting these boundaries. It's how I believe certain things have to be done, right? Definitely, I think someone said the person will feel bad. It's coming from guilt, but it's also a belief. Like, I think that if I say no right now, then the person's gonna feel bad, right? It's belief. Thank you for putting that in there, right? I want you to all, this is a question to hold. So a lot of this is going to come up throughout the session. A question to hold is something where you don't have to respond, but it's something you can take away with you and think about later, and also utilize that in your day-to-day lives, right? So one is, firstly, do you as a person think it's important to say no? If that is correct, you think it's important to say no, then what are the situations that you would have liked to say no, but you couldn't? What stopped you? We did explore this, right? We explored the guilt and the belief. Now coming to resolving. The only way to resolve this is we all speak our own languages, right? We all have our own ways of saying no. I can give you a 10 list of ways to say no. But at the end of the day, it is you who has to go out there and say no to somebody. But one art that I did mention to all of you today is using emotion in your statement. Utilize emotions in your statement and you will realize that the person in front of you will resonate with it. It's a soft touch. And that is exactly how we're going to build boundaries in our space, right? Which brings me, like I promised to all of you, I'm bringing to you all a structure today for well-being, right? So I'm going to the P now, which is personal growth. Another thing that you need to have in your space is personal growth. And a very, very, I think, relevant aspect of personal growth is having goals in life, right? Having meaning, having purpose, having that, seeing yourself as somebody who is a growing individual, if ever developing individual. That's a well-being, healthy well-being strategy. You need to have constant goals in life in order to, be motivated, to wake up, to get out of bed, and to kind of, go ahead and do things that you want to do. How do you set goals? How do we set goals, right? I'm coming to you all with a very, a lot of acronyms today. We started with SPACE and now we're going to SMART and CLEAR, right? So these are strategies. If utilized, you can, you will realize the way that goal setting is not that difficult. Okay. So firstly, it's understanding the fact that, hey, I'm a developing person. I want to learn new things. I want to, build skills in life, right? All of you here today are here because you want to build well-being strategy skills, right? You're all growing individuals, right? We're all doing that, developing. So in order to develop personal and professional goals, there are two things that you have to do. One is that your goals have to be SMART. And when I say SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Okay? I know I just said a bunch of words here. I know it takes a little bit of time to actually get that, going, but it's also self-explanatory, right? Your goals have to be something that is, it can't be in a fantasy individual of you, right? Like, for example, I'll give you an example. I say to myself that, I've always been somebody, let's say, who wakes up at 10 o'clock in the morning, right? Now, I have for 26 years of my life, I wake up at 10 o'clock in the morning. Right? Now, suddenly, if I go to Abhishek and I say, Abhishek, tomorrow I want to start yoga, but I'll wake up at 6 in the morning and I'll do it, right? That's my goal. I want to do yoga, right? But I'm building that goal in a fantasy Shivani. It's not Shivani that actually is taking into account my own habits and skills, right? So we need to be mindful of that. We need to understand, what is my routine? What are my bad habits? What are my good habits? How do I reach those goals incorporating these habits? Most of the time we set goals that are not realistic and they're built in, like I said, that fantasy, the ideal person you want to be. But you got to take a step back and think about who you are and how much of it can you incorporate? What is in your control, right? Maybe I'll be able to wake up at 6 o'clock and do yoga. Maybe I'll be able to do it for 5 days, but on the 6th day, I'm going to get very irritated, right? I'm going to that goal is not sustainable, right? That's exactly what SMART means. Be smart about your goals, learn about yourself, and then apply that in your goal, right? The second one is clear, right? Your goals have to be clear. You have to have clarity in order to be motivated in life to do anything, right? Clear stands for, it has to be collaborative, right? It has to involve people. Better to have accountability with people, have like a buddy or somebody that can take these goals ahead with your guidance, right? Collaborative. It has to be limited. It can't be like, I'll do 10 things in the next 1 week, has to be limited. You have to limit your goals. Realistically, what is achievable, right? It has to be emotional. We always forget the emotions in a lot of things in life. It has to be emotional, because your emotions is what will drive you to your goal. How you feel about waking up at 6 a.m. and doing yoga, right? If the first moment you're thinking about it, you're like, oh no, you're not gonna do it, because tomorrow morning your brain is gonna be like, no, right? It's that feeling, emotional. So you have to learn the emotion that's coming towards your goal, right?
I think, Shivani, the nuance, associated to using emotions in your well-being practices is something which is very difficult for a lot of us to accept, where we, tend to think how can one actually apply emotions to their goals, right? So I think that's what makes us human, and I think we should all be able to use the emotions in our goals as well.
Exactly. Thank you for saying that. Definitely. I mean, emotions is what drives us, right? All of us. Think about it. You see a particular food or a dish, you'll be either happy or you'll be like, no, I don't like this, right? It's an emotion, right? You're trying to emote something, right? You see a person you really love or care. You see your parents, right? Emotion. That's the first thing you'll have. You won't even have dialogue in the beginning. You'll have that feeling that comes out. So similarly, when you look at your goals, right? When you're thinking about yourself as a personally growing person, think about your goal in terms of, how do I feel about my goal, first of all? Does it make me feel happy? Does it make me, is it giving me some kind of negative feeling? I'm not too happy about it. Because that is where you will be able to, drive yourself to reaching that, right? Take emotions into account, right? And the last two are your goals have to be appreciable, right? They need to have some kind of materialistic value to it. Like, people need to be able to kind of see that. It should be recognizable, okay? And lastly, it needs to be refinable. Why? Refinable means that because you're an always developing person, you're always growing, your goals need to constantly be upgraded. Otherwise, you're going to get really bored with monotonous lifestyle, right? You're going to get really bored with the same goal over and over again. I'm sure most of you here had different goals a year ago, and you're here now with different goals, right? You've upgraded. But what I'm saying here is, take a step back, reflect on that upgrade, right? Most of the time we're like going with it. New goal, okay, achieve. Take a step back and think, why did I come up with this goal? How can I make my life easier tomorrow? Maybe I have another goal in mind that I want to reach, right? Right, great. Now I want you to, again, a question to hold, right? Something that you can do as an activity right away. Think about it. What was your goal? A small goal, whatever it is that maybe you wanted to start a week ago, right? Maybe it was 6 a.m. yoga, right? And what is your goal for the next 1 week? Now, there is a very interesting reason why I'm asking these very short, limited goals, goal questions, is because if I start asking all of you, think about a goal from a month ago or a year ago, there's a lot of burden. And if I ask any of you here, what does your life look like, which we all get asked, right? What does your life look like a year from now or 2 years from now? What are your goals? What are your plans, right? Burden. One of the best ways to set goals is, we talked about it, time bound, right? You have to ask yourself, where was I a week ago and where am I now? You see that journey, and that's it. That's going to motivate you and pump you up for the week after and the upcoming week. And before you even realize it, it's been a month, right? But yeah, this is an exercise that you can take back and do yourself. Take out 5 minutes, on a Friday or a Sunday. What was your goal last week? What is your goal for the upcoming week? 5 minutes, right? For your own personal growth. So as we're talking about space, we've come to A. We've done setting boundaries, which is being able to say no. We've done personal growth, which is, you being able to set goals, realistic goals in life. Now we're coming into, I think we've touched upon this quite a lot, but we're actually coming into emotions. you have to have emotions in your space, right? And what do you need to do? You have to have autonomy of emotions in your space. What does that mean? What does autonomy of emotions even mean? Any ideas? Anything on the chat? Anybody would like to share? Right to choose. Good one. Nice, Polly. Thank you. All right. What is autonomy of emotions? Arunava, thank you for telling me your goal. It's nice. I hope it motivates you. Multiple phases of emotions, kind of emotions. Okay, right. Autonomy of emotions, correct. I think someone said the right to express, the right to know your own emotions and the right to express that around, right? And also having people around you who would accept that, right? So autonomy of emotions is basically firstly being able to identify what it is that you're feeling, right? How are you feeling today? How are you doing today? And to be able to understand that, hey, this is okay. Whatever I'm feeling, it's okay. And now how do I, not let these emotions of mine, whether, if they're unhealthy emotions or they're something that, you're feeling that is going to make you maybe, let's say, react to some situation, how do I not do that, right? That is having autonomy of emotions. Some of the common emotions that we do have are, I'll come to that in a bit, but to start with, I do have a poll for all of you, and I would like to cue, I think, the team to please release the poll. So what I want you all to do is please vote for the statement that resonates with you the most, and you can, select as many statements as possible. Now, these statements are: I adjust my behavior depending on who I'm interacting with. I tend to postpone or avoid discussing touchy topics. I find myself feeling nervous about situations or events and I don't even know why. If asked to list my top 3 strengths, I would have a hard time coming up with them. Once a pessimistic thought pops into my head, it's like a floodgate opens. My thoughts get more and more negative. So I'm going to leave this for a minute for people to vote. I can't see the votes, so let me know if people are voting.
People are voting. We have 37 votes, 39.
Great. Let's hope it catches on soon. Thank you all for voting, those of you who did. All right. Let me know. I think if we've reached a 45 or 50, we can close it. Sorry? Yeah.
Yeah, you can see the results also.
Perfect. That's great. Thank you everyone for voting, first of all. And I see that there's most votes for the first statement, which is I adjust my behavior depending on who I'm interacting with. Right. I know a lot of us do that, right? But where's the autonomy then? Right? The second one is I tend to postpone or avoid discussing touchy topics. Oh, this is super common, right? This is when we talk about emotions, it immediately goes into the category of touchy topics for a lot of us. We, in layman's terms, I think nowadays call it cringy, right? We find it very cringy to talk about emotions. It's like, oh, why is this person being such a crybaby, right? Why is this person talking so much about how they're feeling, right? Definitely. So that makes us avoid discussing these touchy topics, right? But we know those topics are important. At the end of the day, they're going to come out. We also have some votes for I find myself feeling nervous about situations or events and I don't even know why. Okay. All right. If asked to list my top 3 strengths, I would have a hard time coming up with them. We have quite a bit of votes for that. Right. Okay. So I can see that most of these statements do resonate with, most of you here. One of the majority ones being adjusting behavior and the other one being touchy topics, right? Why did I ask these statements? It was to bring into light the barriers we have towards emotions, autonomy of emotions, to be specific, right? Now, I can adjust my behavior depending on who I'm interacting with, right? But will I be true to it? Will I be true to myself? Will I be feeling okay about it later? Will I be processing it enough later, right? Most of the time, we do try to succumb to people around us, the kind of, we try to change our behavior for those around us. Of course, if your behavior is unhealthy, right? Then that is a behavior that needs to be resolved. You need to work on that, right? But if it's something that is true to you, you're an you're an expressive person, or let's say, you're not so expressive sometimes, and from time to time you are, or maybe there's some opinions you want to share about the way you feel, right? We tend to change that depending on the crowd because we don't know how we will be perceived. Simply put, right? So having autonomy of emotions, as you guys rightly said, is to being true to your own emotions, to understanding the fact that if I'm sad today, yes, I am sad and that's okay. If I'm angry, I'm angry and okay, I accept my anger. That is step 1 to having autonomy of emotions in your space, right? Now, what are some common emotions that we do have? Right? We have healthy ones. We have the positive, of course, one. We have happiness, we have joy, right? We have, but then we also have these other common emotions that we all face, which is anger. We have, fear, anxiety. We also have, feeling low, right? Those are emotions as well. And we all face them from time to time. Now, I want to bring a connect for all of you. The reason why I'm talking about this as a well-being strategy is most of the time, we need to think about whether we are responding to people or situations or are we reacting to them. Okay. And the difference between respond and react is that there is a time gap, right? Reactions usually happen in that moment, right? If, like, for example, I'm having a fight with, Ria over here and we're not discussing, there's a webinar that has to be done and we're not on the same page for it. And she's really getting me angry, right? And then that moment I can be like, I don't want to do this webinar forever. That's me reacting. But me responding is thinking, where is Ria coming from, right? Where is Ria coming from? She has pressures of her own. That's why she's approached me for this webinar, right? And then I come back and I think, okay, Ria is feeling this way. I'm feeling this way. We're both emotional people, yes. But that doesn't mean we have to let that get into the way of our relationship. I will do the webinar, but I will tell Ria that this is how I'm feeling. Right? That is responding. I can see that I think a lot of you have resonated with the reaction bit, right? But it's true, right? You have a fight with your partner or you have a fight with your parents or family members. You immediately jump to like, no, I will not do this, or like, how can you say this to me, right? There's a lot of that. That is a react. Respond is the person is saying this to you for a reason. Let's all understand why this person is saying this, right? Let me tell the person how I'm feeling. And that is a formula to respond. Formula to respond is acceptance of emotions and communication of emotions. Because let's face it, we all have emotions, right? So in your space, you have to have autonomy of emotions. And let's tomorrow, when you are in a situation where you have, either you're reacting or responding, go back and think, think about it. Did I respond or did I react? Right? And also sometimes your reactions don't have to be so extreme like I, presented to you. Sometimes they're very subtle. They may come out as like a very, like a slight comment towards somebody's behavior or something. That's also a reaction. Because in the long run, reactions don't help us, right? But responding helps us. I hope I hope you're all with me here. Please, share your thoughts. I would love it on the chat box. if you have any thoughts at all. Now, I have a very interesting takeaway activity for all of you here as well. Tomorrow or day after, or, anytime, maybe, if you're not able to express your emotions because, they're touchy or they're cringy, like we discussed, right? Try and think about your emotion or communicate that through a metaphor or a phrase. One I have, put in front of you is that, currently, if I don't want to say I'm scared, then I'll say something like, it's how an elephant feels when it sees a mouse, right? Scared. So similarly, if you can think of certain metaphors for yourself, if you're somebody who is not so expressive in life, and you don't quite get that gist of emotions, you just feel so uncomfortable about it, that's completely okay. You don't have to jump to somebody who is like completely comfortable with your emotions. You don't have to jump there. Just take it one step at a time here, right? Start with something that, maybe it's a story you can share. Instead of saying, I'm sad right now, maybe there's a story you can share, maybe an experience you can share, right? If you don't want to say I am sad, right? If you don't want to say I'm angry, maybe there's something that, you can share again with a metaphor or an example that you can put out for people. It's a great way to get that, that kind of, you're still expressing, but also you're comfortable expressing because this is your space, right? It's your space. Let's remember that. Okay, so tomorrow, please think about the metaphor that you would like to use, and please think about the one I just said. Currently, it is how an elephant feels when it sees a mouse, right? Right now, I'm not scared. I was in the beginning of the webinar. But just give me 1 second. Okay. All right, that brings me to our C, right? In our space, we have setting boundaries. We have personal growth now. We have autonomy of emotions, and now we need to communicate and we need to connect with people, right? Just because it's our space doesn't mean that, okay, this is my space, nobody come in, done, bye. It doesn't mean that, right? It also means that we need to be able to, in order to have healthy well-being strategy, we need to be able to connect with people, right? We talk a lot about interpersonal relationships. Everywhere you go in life, you meet people, right? If we can't live with people, how do we live in a functional way, right? Which is why connection is a great skill to have in your space, to be able to connect with people. Now, I did promise you all structure, so I'm bringing to you all a structure, right? Connectedness is basically having meaningful, I'm not talking about just random, Facebook friends, okay? I'm talking about meaningful connections, right? You have a one-to-one call with somebody, you actually spend 5 minutes listening to the person, or the person spends 5 minutes listening to you, right? That is a connection, it's a meaningful connection. Now, how do we do that? How do we connect? The structure to connect is in front of you here. Firstly, it's about building your relationship, right? Building rapport, simply put, right? Having those tiny verbal, non-verbal skill set, right? Like if my body language is right here in front of you, you will know that I'm tuned in. But if I'm slouching back and I'm doing this webinar, everyone's going to be like, hey, what's wrong with this girl, right? Why is she, this is not right, right? So body language, eye contact, right? If I had turned off my video and done this entire session, you guys would not be able to relate with me. You guys would not be able to resonate with whatever I talked about when it comes to emotions and feelings, right? It's because of eye contact. Now, to give you a very cute examples, this eye contact thing works with animals also, right? If any of you have pets, or specifically dogs, if you were to instruct a dog while looking at their eyes, then they'll understand the instruction so much better, regardless of the tone of your voice. Whether if you're looking there and talking, they will not be able to quite get the sense of it. Building rapport means all these different things. Humans are wired. We are all wired to connect with each other. We're all wired to kind of, have eye contact, body language. We have that. So in order to build relations, we need to have, verbal and non-verbal communication skills. So in order to connect in your space, you have to build something. You have to build a meaningful relationship. I think, Abhishek, you had something to say here. I don't know, you had unmuted.
No, We're good.
All right. Okay. Feel free to jump in, please.
Absolutely.
Yes. So yeah. Okay. So the first step is building, right? That build comes maybe, within the first meetup, or maybe in the 5 meetups or 10 meetups that you have with the person, right? You build that relationship. Secondly, connectedness doesn't just stop there. Like, you can't just, have a conversation with somebody and say, okay, now I have a meaningful connection, done, finished, right? Second step is preserving that connection, which means going back to that person, going back and committing to time for that person, and the person doing the same for you, preserving that relationship, right? Understanding each other's likes and dislikes, finding a common ground, perhaps. Very good top executives like Warren Buffett, what he does is he kills 2 birds with 1 stone. So he kind of, he builds connections with people who are in the same field as him. So he can constantly talk about his field, which is of interest of him, and also have a connection with the same person. So that's exactly, this is some technique that a lot of people do when they don't have enough time, right? A lot of the times we'll come back with an excuse saying, hey, we don't have enough time to build connections or have these connected people, around. So you do this. Lastly, it is about maintaining this relationship. So again, going back to, finding that acknowledgement and gratitude for the person, thanking them for being there. That is a great skill to have in order to maintain relationships. You go back and you tell your, family member, thank you for being there. They'll be there next time you need them, right? Or your friend, thank you for being there, right? So we have built, we have preserved, and then we have maintained. And I will also elaborate a little bit on preserve. I think someone has asked a question to me, so I'll take that in the question round as well when we come to connectedness questions. Okay. All right. Last but not the least, to end this whole thing and wrap up your space, right? We have setting boundaries, personal growth, autonomy of emotions, connectedness, and to bring this whole thing together in empathy. Empathy for self and empathy for others, right? Empathy for self does not always mean like, oh, I need to have self-confidence or my self-esteem needs to be high. It's not that. Empathy for self is really getting in there and connecting with yourself. How do I feel? How am I doing? And doing the same for people outside. That's empathy. Empathy definitely helps us build social connections. But I want to, again, this is a question to hold. What is empathy for all of you here? It's different for each person. You can give it a name, maybe other than empathy. You want to maybe give it a character, maybe give it a color. Okay, what does empathy look like? For example, for me, empathy is like pink in color, right? It's just how I picture empathy. Now, how does it feel to have this kind of color in your life, right? How does it feel to have this? How is it adding value to you? And how can you continuously show this color or this empathy in order to, take care of your own well-being, right? This is a question to hold because a lot of us here, we see empathy in our own ways. We all have different perceptions about empathy, right? Now, to end the whole thing with, I'm going to leave you all with a quote. But I'm ready for any questions on all of this. And it was really great talking to all of you and interacting with all of you. I hope you've had some meaningful takeaways. Otherwise, I'm just going to give it to Abhishek to moderate further.
Thank you so much, Shivani. I think it was wonderful covering the whole topic with you. And I think all of us here have definitely learned a lot of things, especially the whole way in which you sort of made it very bite-sized and easy for all of us to consume. And the mnemonic abbreviations that you came up with, I think that just did wonders. And it's just very easy to understand how important it is to create space. And I think it's just been a great session. And yeah, I will ask all of you to please put down your questions down in the chat. Meanwhile, I'll just say a few questions that we've had during the session. So we have Arunava Das asking us that he's got a lot of anger issues and he's been trying to find a well-being practice to help cope up with this. What is your take on this, Shivani?
So Arunava, I want to start by saying that firstly, it's about thinking, okay? Please go back and reflect, where is your anger issue coming from? What is the root of it? Ask yourself, hey, why am I feeling this way? And then track it. To start with it, just track your anger. Are there certain things that make you more angry than others, right? And I would always ask you to scale it. Scale that anger. If 1 is, no anger at all and you're completely fine, okay, and 10 is you being like outblown, crazy, angry person, right? Then where do you stand at which time of the day? Is it a particular person? And, scale that. I hope I'm making sense. And I hope if you have any clarifications on this, try it. Because the reason why I'm asking you to scale it and I'm not giving you a scale is because you know your anger the best. You know when you're feeling okay, when you're at a 1 or a 2, and you know when you've reached beyond a 5, right? And then there is resolving here. Once you know that you've reached beyond a 5, try and walk away from that situation or that person or whatever it is that's making you angry, right? Also, a very quick takeaway for you is check if this anger is directed towards external people or internal. Is it directed towards people around you or is it directed towards yourself? Because those are 2 different things. And reach out to a professional if needed.
I guess I have a question. When you were talking about empathy, I wanted to understand, is there any negative thing associated to empathy? Because I feel sometimes empathy can also become toxic for someone, especially if you're trying to, deep dive into understanding the other person. And I think that's where the whole concept of building boundaries comes, where where you should be aware of when to stop or when to not empathize more. What's your take on this?
So my thought on this is I have dealt with people who have been a bit, let's say, too empathetic, right? It's again going back to what I was going to talk about was preserve in connectedness. It is preserving your energy. You need to be able to understand and see where, again, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much of this is taking your energy. If you're somebody who is empathetic, it's also about setting boundaries, like Abhishek said, time to say no, time to go back, preserve your energy, and then come back to it. Yes, empathy does have its way to creep into it, get into it and just become like, you may start to think that you're the rescuer, right? You're always trying to rescue people or you're always trying to be there for people. This is also a good time to stop and think, who is there for me? Right? And go back and find that person so you can also get a little bit of empathy for yourself.
I think that answers my question. Thank you. We have Garima Sharma asking us the difference between preserving and maintaining connections.
Yes, that is exactly. So I was going to elaborate a little bit more. In the preserving bit of the structure of connectedness, we have the build, preserve. Preserve, it also means about energy preserving. So the same thing I was talking about when it comes to empathy. Learn about your energy, right? So you'll notice that there's some people in your life that you build connections with, but they're draining you, right? You're not feeling okay around them. You come out of that conversation feeling completely mentally drained or tired, and you're just like, it's not okay. So that is the way to understand whether this connection is going to be meaningful or not. And that person may, other people may not be drained by that person, but this is just something that is for you. You are drained by that person. So learn and understand whether this person is draining your energy or, the situation that you always find this person is draining your energy, and try and preserve your energy. Because if you don't preserve your energy, you cannot maintain. You cannot go back to the person and commit time to them. I hope I'm making sense here, Garima. Thank you for your question.
Next, we have Polly, who says she has a hard time showing empathy to a friend and people in her family. And she's asking, how should she develop it?
So, Polly, I hear it's about empathy is, in definition, right? It's about putting yourself in other people's shoes. That's exactly what we've been learning this whole time, right? Empathy is actually also about, firstly, ask yourself, how are you feeling towards these people? What is the barrier? Go back to the barrier. Think about it. Is there some kind of unresolved situation or any kind of unresolved issue that you may have towards these relationships that you have that may become, even if it's a small thing, 1% may become a barrier to you going back out there. The other way to look at it is, have you always been this person, right? Have you always been somebody who is not able to show empathy? And also define empathy for yourself, right? There must be a reason. Maybe it's a definition of empathy. You may have certain expectation that empathy has to be like this, right? I have to get people 10 flowers so that they know I'm empathetic. And maybe there's a structure you put into place, and every time you don't reach that expectation of empathy, you start thinking, I'm not doing it enough. So these are certain thoughts for you to take back and think about. I hope that helps.
We have Amog Mawani asking, is there a way to overcoming the expressing problem so that we can have the power of our life?
Okay. So expressing problem, right? The whole cringy feeling, touchy feeling of emotions that comes in, right? See, sometimes what happens is you have to live with who you are, right? You have to understand that, hey, this is something that makes me feel uncomfortable. So either what you do is you try and find tiny bit of steps. Like I said, don't jump from 1 to 10 immediately. If you're not able to express yourself completely for so many years, because you've habituated to it now, let's say 20 years that you've not been able to express yourself, you can't just immediately start expressing tomorrow, right? You have to maybe figure out different alternatives. First, start by maybe writing down your expression, journal a little bit, right? I am feeling this way, I'm feeling that way. Accept it. What I usually do, and I have, some of my clients do, is when they have this problem, I tell them to sit with that emotion. No matter how discomforting it is, sit with it. You're feeling really, really sad right now or anxious, just sit with that emotion and constantly say to yourself, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. Once you've accepted it, nothing's going to stop you from, communicating that to other people. Sit with your emotion.
I think that brings us to the end of the Q&A session. Thank you so much, Shivani, for, asking the right, for enlightening all of us with your insights. And I think it's been a great session for me as well. There are a lot of takeaways that I've had from this session, and I think all of us should practice everything that you had to put there about getting the right well-being for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there is a lot for empathy to play a role here, and building good intercultural relationships, and actually building a good social well-being for yourself. So I think it's been a wonderful session, and thank you so much everyone for joining this session today. And I hope all of you had a great time learning a lot from Shivani, and we'll be all seeing you very soon in our next Wellness Wednesday session.
Great. Thank you so much. I would really like to thank Onsurity for this, wellness initiative and bringing these insightful, meaningful, and practical live sessions and content for their members and beyond. So I'm really glad that, you guys are all doing this. And thank you all for showing up for yourself today.